What can make the power grid go down? There are many reasons, as we will see, but they can all be broken into one of two categories: natural or man-made events, and sometimes a combination of the two. A localized car crash event is a good example. Picture a car has an accident near your house, knocks over a power pole, and the power goes out. Now, this event may just affect your neighborhood, and your power might be out for a few hours until the accident is cleared and the power company can restore the equipment at that location. But as we'll see from a story from Chicago CBS 2 News, 2,000 customers were without power from a single car accident.
Morning in Highland Park, wet roads caused a car to crash into a utility pole along Avenue 55 and Carlota Boulevard. It caused a domino effect. All the poles on the block came down with it. And as a result, more than 2,000 people lost power in the neighborhood. The driver wasn't hurt.
And in 2022, a private plane crashed into a transmission tower, and they had to shut the power off in order to rescue the two passengers in the plane. This took a period of time and ended up taking the power down for a number of people.
Tonight, 2 people are still trapped in a small plane that crashed into power lines in Maryland after taking off from our area. The plane is dangling hundreds of feet in the air in a power line tower in the Gaithersburg area. Investigators say the plane crashed just before 6 this evening after leaving the Westchester County Airport in White Plains. The pilot and a passenger on board are reportedly okay, but cannot be brought down until the plane is secured and crews are sure there is no power in the tower. The crash knocked out power to thousands in the area. So far, no word on what caused the crash.
Another kind of local event can be a storm. Most of us have experienced a windstorm and trees fall down and they knock down some power lines, and the people beyond that lose power until the power company can get back to help out. But sometimes it can be pretty large. Boston, CBS 4, tells a story of a local storm that affected 200,000 people.
Cleanup underway across the Bay State this after a powerful storm packing heavy winds and rains brought trees into homes and power lines down. A mess across much of New England.
Massive power outages reported tonight. National Grid is reporting more than 200,000 customers are without power in Massachusetts, and more than 28,000 Eversource customers are still in the dark.
A major storm event is exemplified by the hurricane that took out all the power for Puerto Rico a few years back. Matter of fact, Puerto Rico has been hit by hurricanes a number of times with smaller amounts of power damage. Hurricane Ernesto in 2006, Hurricane Irene 2011, and Hurricanes Irma and Maria in 2017. Maria did the biggest damage. Another way that power can get cut off is a combination of man-made and natural events. California is a good example. They had extremely high heat, they had wildfires, they had other factors that created a phenomena where the demand by people using the electricity was higher than the power company could provide. And so what they had to do is to create voluntarily rolling blackouts. San Francisco CBS tells about how it affected 500 million customers with the threat of rolling blackouts.
We're going through the worst of this extreme heat wave. It is the first alert weather day with temps passing 110 degrees in some inland spots. And Cal ISO just upgraded its emergency power alert to stage 3. That means rolling blackouts could start any minute. PG&E has put 525,000 customers on notice.
So the state of California tried to take some actions to prevent rolling blackouts from happening again. And 2 years later, Sacramento, the capital, CBS 13 explained that there were actually 3 events that happened simultaneously that created the previous rolling blackout situation.
Tonight, California launching new efforts to help prevent those rolling blackouts this summer. Adrian Moore is getting answers on the state's multi-billion-dollar plan to help keep electricity flowing across the state.
California's power supplies could be tight this summer.
There is currently an estimated 1,700 megawatt capacity shortfall.
Rolling blackouts hit the state 2 years ago for the first time in nearly 20 years. And they almost happened again last year when grid managers declared a stage 2 electrical emergency. So what could put California on the brink of blackouts again this summer?
Regional heat waves, large wildfires, and severe drought conditions.
The biggest concern is extreme heat events that stress the power grid in the evening hours when solar production drops, but air conditioner use remains high.
Then there's the phenomena of what I'm calling the domino effect, where one power failure leads to another and leads to another. In this case, the most notorious one was in New York and Quebec in 2003. New York Times tells the story of this domino effect.
50 million people are thought to have lost power.
In 2003, a massive blackout struck major areas of the U.S. and Canada and was perceived as a wake-up call for the nation.
There has been a massive power outage throughout much of the Northeast, both of the United States and of Canada.
Millions and millions of people were caught by surprise when the electrical grid suddenly crashed.
It shut down 100 power plants, from Ottawa down to Cleveland and as far east as New York.
It took 29 hours for the power to be turned back on in most major cities, but the brief outage contributed to at least 11 deaths and caused an estimated $6 billion in economic losses.
So what created this catastrophic event? Well, interestingly, it was just some tree branches rubbing against power lines in Ohio. That then became complicated by human error, software problems, and equipment failures, which led to the most widespread blackout in North American history. We also have the threat of terrorists attacking our grid, and that was brought to America's attention in 2013, as this CNN story explains.
It was captured on surveillance video. You can see a brief streak of light, perhaps a flashlight carried by an attacker. Then come the sparks. They are bullets hitting the chain link fence that surrounds the Pacific Gas and Electric, or PG&E substation in San Jose, a station that feeds power to Silicon Valley. California Congressman Henry Waxman says it shows our electrical grid isn't adequately protected from both cyber and now physical attacks.
This was an unprecedented and sophisticated attack on an electric grid substation using military-style weapons.
The April attack occurred just before 1 in the morning. The snipers first went into an underground vault and cut telephone cables. A half hour later, they sprayed the substation with bullets for nearly 20 minutes, knocking out 17 transformers, according to PG&E. When police arrived, the shooters were gone, but they found more than 100 shell casings from a high-powered assault rifle. No fingerprints. It seemed like a professional job. To prevent a blackout, energy workers rerouted power, but it took nearly a month to make the repairs.
Under slightly different conditions, there could have been a serious power outage or worse.
It was a little-known attack, and it's not clear what the motives were. But now, months later, some are trying to bring it to the forefront, arguing that if similar shootings happen throughout the nation at once, collectively, they could take out a large chunk of the electrical grid, leaving millions in the dark.
Another kind of terrorist attack on the grid is a cyber attack. In this case, you're not using guns or bombs, but you're using the internet to get into the computers that control the power grid. Former U.S. Senator Byron Dorgan explains.
Massive blackouts continue to be a global problem. 15 million people lost power in Europe in 2006, 60 million in Brazil and Paraguay in 2009, and more than 500 million in India in 2012. The threat today is bigger than a few downed power lines.
We know from lots of anecdotal examples that the terrorists that use cyber terror are very inventive. They know that if they could bring down an electric power grid system, that would cause really maximum damage. This is a big challenge for our country.
Electromagnetic pulse, or EMP, is an enemy, a terrorist, setting off a nuclear bomb above in the sky. If an enemy of the United States, for instance, was to detonate an atomic blast 200 miles above the center of the continental United States, it is conceived that the invisible magnetic pulse that would come from that detonation could affect all of continental United States, potentially wiping out the grid and taking out all microelectronics. WION News gives some details about an EMP.
A panel of experts at the Universal Peace Federation has now issued a warning on the growing threat of EMP, or electromagnetic pulse weapons. Such an attack can knock out virtually all communications and other critical services of countries in a matter of minutes. For long, experts have warned that key electrical infrastructure in the United States remains particularly vulnerable to an electromagnetic pulse attack, or EMP, likely to be orchestrated by China, North Korea, or even Russia. The Universal Peace Federation specialists have now said that the US is at a pivotal moment if it wants to avoid a potential doomsday scenario. But in contrast to other conventional weapons, an EMP explosion does not physically harm humans. What it does, though, is cripple all electronic devices and infrastructure within its radius. The weapon at first is glided directly above an intended target. These weapons, according to the US nomenclature, are classified as high-altitude electromagnetic pulse, or HEMP. A HEMP attack can interfere with radio frequency and instantly produce damaging voltage in electronic devices across thousands of miles. It can hinder fuel distribution, transport, food and water supply, and most importantly, communications, especially military communications. Such attacks can permanently immobilize vehicles with modern electronic ignition and control systems.
Similar in effect to an EMP is a geomagnetic storm, except in this case it's not a man-made event, it's not a terrorist attack, it's a natural phenomena. And there are two variations of this. A geomagnetic storm is a bunch of magnetic particles bombarding the Earth and creating havoc with the electronic transmission lines and equipment, such as GPS. There's also an event from the sun, which is similar, which is a CME, a coronal mass ejection. And that's when the sun, which is a bunch of flames coming off the surface of the sun, if it has an exceptionally large flame coming off the surface, then that can impact the Earth eventually in a matter of hours. So a geomagnetic storm is what we're looking at in this particular case. PBS on the NOVA program explains about in 1989 there was a geomagnetic storm in Quebec that did some serious damage.
Could a massive wave of particles from the sun knock out our electrical grid?
It can induce currents and end up overloading the system. And when you overload the power grids, it could cause blackouts.
In 1989, the Quebec region experienced a geomagnetic storm resulting from a significantly large coronal mass ejection, causing 6 million people to lose power for up to 9 hours.
Now, the 1989 blackout was a wake-up call for our industry. The root cause was that between Quebec and the United States, we have long corridors of transmission lines. To transfer this huge amount of power between Canada and the United States, you have to support and maintain a healthy voltage across the network. During this geomagnetic disturbance, we lost 7 of these devices that are critical to maintain voltage, and we saw a voltage collapse, a blackout. There's truly no other phenomena that can cause such a wide area failure.
So we've seen that there can be localized power outages, there can be temporary power outages, there can be widespread power outages in regions like New York and Quebec, and there can be nationwide or even worldwide danger of the grid going down if cyber attacks were done worldwide. So infographics show on the internet explains briefly about the danger of a nationwide power failure, if not even worldwide.
You're enjoying a night of relaxation catching up on the infographic show videos you missed during your busy work week. Suddenly, the screen goes black, the lights go out, and the air conditioner turns off. What's going on, you say into the darkness? You stumble to the window and look outside. There are no lights coming from any of the houses in your neighborhood. The glow of the nearby city has been extinguished. The electricity has gone out around the world. In the next 60 minutes, there will be chaos, panic, and death. According to a former director of the CIA, Robert James Woolsey, 90% of humans could die in the United States if the electricity were to completely go out. This is a staggering statistic, which puts the death toll at around 297 million people in the US alone. If all electricity goes out around the world, the first 60 minutes will be crucial for your survival. People will panic and make rash decisions, which means you need to be one step ahead of them. Just remember to stay away from elevators, gas stations, and urban areas, as these places will be where chaos breaks out the quickest.
So what can make the grid go down? We have seen that we can lose power without warning from a variety of natural and man-made events that could range from temporary to life-altering long-term power outages. Therefore, it's important to take preventative actions to be prepared to be able to survive in the event that we experience a power failure in the future. To be aware of new videos like this one, be sure to subscribe to the Preparing for the Time of Trouble channel. For more free videos and downloadable audio podcasts, as well as handouts, go to www.preparingforthetimeoftrouble.com. Topic categories include recordings of live seminar presentations, country living, sustainable gardening, homestead remedies, how to be self-sufficient when the grid goes down, wild edible and medicinal plants, hydrotherapy, and end-time Bible prophecies. To take advantage of these free resources, go to preparingforthetimeoftrouble.com.